Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of Talmbout Wrestling, right here on the Black Phoenix Network. I am your host, the untouchable J.R. Atkins, and this is your primary destination for wrestling conversation. I told you I was coming back, didn't I? Told you you'd see me again. That's what I told you, and here I am, true to my word. Your second episode of Talmbout Wrestling. Last night in prime time, baby. Okay, it was a little later than prime time. Okay, I meant to get it out in prime time. It didn't come out in prime time. It came out a little late. That's okay, right? Still got it out. So when you watch this one, if you haven't seen episode 43 yet, go watch episode 43. A little more WWE centric, very Juneteenth. You don't have to, but I would love it if you did. Keep up with the continuity because it may go together. You never know. You may miss something. Right? You may miss something. So episode 43, 44, kind of a package deal. All right. But here you are. Thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for tuning in for the second part, okay, of the redemption arc, if you want to call it that. All right. Thank you for tuning in again, as always. If you're new here, of course, you know what to do. Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe. Subscribe is the key thing. I probably should have said that first. It probably should be like subscribe, like, share, comment, something like that. I probably should change the order. But I'm so used to doing like, share, and subscribe. That's kind of a thing now. So make sure you go do that. If you're not new here, if you tune in every week, but maybe you haven't subscribed for some reason, and I don't know how that works because then you're a weirdo. But if you're new here and you tune in every week, again, make sure that you go and you do the same thing. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you spread the word. Of course, we are on the road to episode 50, and I'm on the road to episode 50. I'm sorry. Yeah, episode 50. And I'm on the road to trying to get 50 subscribers. 50 subscribers to this. I think we're halfway there. Close enough, maybe. So, still trying to get there, still trying to cross that hump. So make sure we spread the word. We're doing the things. All right. We're doing the things. I appreciate everybody that's tuned in thus far to help grow this. This will be a bit of more of an AEW centric show. Yesterday we focused on really just WWE and more specifically the King of the Ring, SummerSlam, the connection between the two. I can confirm. I will do an update. I mentioned last night. By the time that you watched episode 43, that we probably would know who was going to be on the finals. It is confirmed that Obafemi, of course, qualified last Monday. Jey Uso defeated Javon Evans last night. He's going to the finals. We have Obafemi versus Jey Uso. We're heavily teasing Jey Uso is going to come after Cody. Of course, they wouldn't come after Roman. Duh. Anyway, and Oba is calling out Brock, not Roman or Cody. So, not sure what's going to happen there. I really don't want Jey Uso to be Obafemi. I don't. I hope it doesn't happen. And that's nothing against Jey Uso, but it's just like we're gonna revert back to kind of doing the same stuff we kind of been doing instead of pushing somebody new. Because Jay's not gonna beat Cody, and I don't know how much. I mean, I guess you could have the Jacob Fatu of it. I don't know. I don't feel good about that. And if you're going to tell me that now you're going to have Obafemi lose at 2 pay-per-views in a row, come on now. Some of y'all justified this when it was Brock in Italy. And I don't care if it's because Brock interferes or what. You gonna have Oba lose at 2 pay-per-views in a row? Come on now, man. What we doing? After beating Brock at Mania, you're gonna have him lose for 2 pay-per-view. The next 2 pay-per-view appearances he makes, he loses. And Brock Lesnar's involved in both. Get the fuck out of here. I wish you would. And I'm holding all y'all feet to the fire. If that happens, I'm holding all y'all's feet to the fire. that have justified this thus far. But anyway, anywho, before we get started, I've already gotten a little too deep into the talk anyway, but I wanted to make sure I cleared up the WWE of it all. And meanwhile, on the other side in the AEW world, we got our own tournament going on. And I'm not going to say now that's how you do a tournament because, quite frankly, I mean the men's was kind of the men's kind of told itself, but man, I don't want to watch. I don't want to do that because it's gonna mess up. I know it's gonna. Whatever. The men's was easy to kind of predict. The women's not so much. I ruined it for myself, but I kind of figured that was gonna be the case anyway. Yeah. So men's is kind of easy to predict. Women's not so much, and there have been some interesting changes made there. That I'm not entirely certain how all that works. So we're going to talk about all that too. That's probably going to be the main thing we discuss, but we'll talk about a little bit more about Forbidden Door too. But before we get into any of that, I did not forget you because I know what you came for. I know what you came for. A couple more clean items too. I want to do all this. It's time for the shirt of the day. You see it. You see it. Big Bullet Club energy. Big BC energy, baby. It's the only Bullet Club shirt I got. And the fact that it's a Phoenix, and if you know, you know, it just makes sense, right? Like branding is a thing. Branding is a thing. They came out with a Phoenix shirt. You get it. Also, I mentioned this last night. If you've been paying attention, because I didn't get to get my episode out last week, episode 43 last week, and I feel so bad about it. I moved up something, introduced something that I had been holding on to. It's actually been done for a while, but I hadn't really done anything. But I finally introduced the very first Talmbout Rasslin t-shirts. And you can see those. We're going to see if we can get it better this time. You can see those right about now. Did that work? I think it worked. As you can see, very retro logo, very very keeping it simple, stupid, you know. There's some different colors coming, there's some different um combinations coming. Want to start with these, keeping it really simple for anybody who wants to. So you see we got your black, you see we got the red, you see we got the navy blue, and I even included some popular shoes of the Jordan persuasion. Okay, that maybe help you swag it out. Because what I say, if we don't do nothing else, we got to swag it out. You got to swag it out. So that's that. So make sure you get those if you're interested. I don't have my store up necessarily, but I can fulfill the orders if you need them. So if you're interested, make sure that you hit me in the hit my inbox, hit me in the comments, whatever, however you want to hit me up. Let me know you're interested. I'll make sure we get that situated, and we can go from there. So make sure you support. We have our first piece of merch. More to come, but we're gonna start there. So now that we got all of that out of the way, let's do what we do. Let's talk about some wrestling, and more importantly, let's talk about some AEW. Now, we're on the road to Forbidden Door, and the door doesn't seem too forbidden right now. I'm gonna be honest. The door doesn't seem all that forbidden. This is probably the most unforbidden door of all the forbidden doors. I've seen a lot of people kind of making reference to that, and I mean, it is what it is. There are let's see how many of these can I actually talk about, because some of these haven't been announced necessarily yet. There's one. Well, okay. Barring spoilers, there are 8 matches that have been announced. There most definitely will be more. There hadn't been an AEW pay per view with 8 matches probably since, I don't know if there's ever been. If I'm gonna be honest, of those 8 matches, we're looking at maybe 3 that are kind of Forbidden Door, but other than that, it's kind of a very basic AEW pay per view. There's some ways to look at it as being quote unquote forbidden. If you want to throw like ROH or something different in there, but like even that's kind of tricky. Yeah. And for this to be, this is the thing. For this to be the most wide net of a the most wide net of Forbidden Door. Because normally, so it started out, obviously it was just AEW and New Japan. And then maybe at some point they threw ROH in there. As of now, it is like they're branding it kind of AEW, I think ROH. Let me make sure I see that. It's because it's on the graphic, I'm sure. Okay, so they're not really counting ROH anything separate. But we have AEW, New Japan, of course. This year they're adding in CMLL and Stardom. Stardom, of course, is New Japan's sister brand, the women's brand, basically. And it's been kind of I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where there's no CMLL involvement really at all. Of course, there's a little bit of Stardom. There was more Stardom in the tournament, I think, and maybe some CMLL if you want to count like Persephone, because I think she has a dual, if I'm not mistaken, contract. But it's not a lot of forbidden in this Forbidden Door. So far, we have Jon Moxley and Bandito for the Continental Championship. That is, okay, kind of random. Not forbidden. Bandito's the ROH World Champion, so if you want to look at it like that, I mean, I guess maybe, but not really. Tekla, of course, probably the most forbidden of the Forbidden Door matches, taking on Starlight Kid from Stardom for the AEW Women's World Championship. Of course, that makes sense because Tekla has been dead set. There's a lot of history between Tekla and Stardom in general, so having that be a thing there definitely makes sense. There's another match that I can't announce yet because I don't think it's been. You won't know that until tonight. You have the women's final for the Owen Hart Cup. The last semifinal match will be tonight as Athena takes on Maya World. We're gonna cover all that as well because I don't think I've talked about the tournament much at all. You have Cope and Cage taking on the Dogs, David Finlay and Clark Connors. I saw somebody say like he's booking the Dogs like he forgot that he signed them and they're not in New Japan anymore. Because that's as close as Forbidden is. They're new. Like they just debuted this year. Is it this year? Yeah, I think they just debuted this year. And people have been talking about the name the Dogs. I don't care, but I guess they could do something better. But maybe not. I don't know. The other Forbidden Door match is almost a staple at this point. The Zack Sabre Jr. match. We got Kenny Omega versus Zack Sabre Jr., which is guaranteed to be, very special. And then the men's Owen Hart Cup final, that actually is already set. It's Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland. Winner goes on to All In for the World Championship. And I actually don't think this will be the main event. I actually think Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland is going to be the main event. But what is currently kind of listed, quote unquote, as the main event is this one, two, is it 12-man tag team? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 12-man steel cage, a 12-man tag team steel cage match. Similar probably to what they did last year with the Death Riders versus, team, I guess it was a Team Ospreay. It was like Will Ospreay, Darby Allin, why is he drawing a blank on his name? Tanahashi, uh, 3 other people whose names escape me at the moment. But even that had a Forbidden Door feel last year. This year, not so much, because we got Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roddy Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Takeshita, Darby Allin. That's a very AEW team. Takeshita does have some New Japan kind of ties, but he's not like on a New Japan contract. But he's a former New Japan world champion. I think he's had another belt for them. Versus MJF and basically the Don Callis family. You got Kevin Knight, Kyle Fletcher, Jake Doyle, Okada, of course, who has a lot of New Japan connection. Andrade El Idolo, who is the New Japan television champion, if I'm not mistaken, right now. Is it television champion? I think he is. There's no Forbidden Door in there. Like Ishii kind of was hinted to be on that match, but then they like attacked him, so now he's not in it. So again, the most unforbidden of Forbidden Doors, it seems. 8 matches. Pretty sure they're going to name at least 3 for the pre-show card. Those will probably be some Forbidden Door-ish, some lower card Forbidden Door-ish matches. I don't see them announcing anything. I mean, you still got I think this week is the go home. Next week is the go home. So you still got time to announce some stuff. It still looks like it's going to be a great card. But I don't know. For the theme, it could have just been something else, and I'm not sure exactly what it is about that. Maybe I'm sure somebody's going to ask him, because they do that type of thing anyway. So somebody's probably going to ask what's going on with that. But go figure. But let's start off with the Owen Hart Cup. All right. Now, because I hadn't been here in like 2 weeks, I hadn't talked about a lot of Dynamite at all. So I think when we last left off, Will Ospreay in a crazy match progressed to the that's what I thought. Progressed to the finals, and we were waiting to see who would be facing him in the finals. Of course, like I said, this one was pretty. The men's bracket was actually very easy to call as soon as you saw it. I think I called it all the way through to the end. Because of course you had Will Ospreay, Samoa Joe, Mark Davis, Jack Perry on one side of the bracket, Swerve, Bandito, Claudio, and Brody on the other side of the bracket. Of course, it all made sense booking wise. Ospreay to beat Joe, of course, move on. Mark Davis to beat Jack Perry, because you had to have the rematch of Will Ospreay to Mark Davis, because Mark Davis is the reason that Will Ospreay ended up being trained by the Death Riders. So he had to get that win back to get to the finals. Perfectly good sense. Swerve and Bandito, of course, Swerve had already kind of attacked and called out Bandito, so this was them having their match. He wins, goes on to the semis. Claudio and Brody, big Hoss-ish battle. Big meat match. Brody wins, of course, because what you need to have, Swerve and Brody, because of course they already have an issue. Brody and Bandito being partners and friends. So a lot of things tied in there. So even from a storyline perspective, all these matches kind of made sense to do. Swerve on the Dynamite that I didn't cover ended up beating Brody King, of course, because what made sense. Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland in the final. Winner goes on to All In. There was not a bigger match in this tournament you could have done than that. And I entirely expect that that one will main event Forbidden Door, and uh, and he'll go on to All In. We'll see what happens after that, but that's what I entirely believe will happen. And I mean, there's still a pay per view in between that. What is it? Redemption, I think it is going to be in July. So there's even still something in between. There's so the picture isn't going to be completely clear. We just know whoever wins at Forbidden Door will be going on to All In to face whoever the champion is. So we'll see how that goes. The Swerve Brody match, really good. Swerve does not miss at all. This past week on Dynamite, we had a face-to-face with Will Ospreay and Swerve. Really good stuff. Will Ospreay has this thing about like awkwardly talking about banging Alex Windsor. It's randomly, and it's like nobody asked for that. I ain't mad at it, but it's really strange. Really strange for you to do that. Sidebar: congratulations to Will Ospreay and Alex Windsor. They tied the knot. I think last weekend. So, congrats to them. So from there, okay, sorry. So yeah, from there, you get Swerve basically telling Will Ospreay like, "Oh, yo, you changed. You rolling with the Death Riders now. Like, what's going on with you?" And they really laid bare like a lot of stuff that's happened like over the last year, because you know, basically saying like, "Yo, you my friend," but there's some moments when you wasn't there for me, dude. You know, where were you when they were breaking my neck in that steel cage? Where you were out? And he was saying that I definitely was like, well, he couldn't have helped you because the Don Callis family took him out. Remember when Warlow came back for that one night and then we didn't see him no more? Yeah. That happened. So he was in there, so he couldn't help me. But he brought it up. He's like, well, your knee was messed up. You couldn't come help me, so I understand that. But let's go back to All In. And at this point, it just feels like you're just pulling grievances. But I understand. He's like, you're my boy, so I wasn't gonna say nothing, man. But it's more than one. It's more than one time that you can kind of let me out here now. I'm just trying to see what's really hood. What's really hood, homie? You know what I'm saying? You supposed to be my man, 50 grand. You leaving me face down in the sand. What's really hood, homie? So I get that. So he basically says, but let's go back to All In. We teamed up. We took out the Young Bucks. And I told you, yo, it's Hangman's time. I told you to come help me with Hangman. You said no. So then I get out there. They try to take me out again. I leave on a stretcher. But then, when I watch it back, I come find out you come out and you hand my man's a chain. So what's good with that? Why were you not out there to help me? Swerve is like, yo, nah, man. I had to listen to you trying to convince me that this Hangman time, no. And now we not doing that now. So they jaw back and forth. But Swerve's like, yo, let me tell you, we're gonna tear the house down at Forbidden Door. But in the end, it's gonna be just like it's always been for the last 10 years. And your winner is Swerve Strickland. And when I win the title at All In, if you want to come back and face me for it, sure you can. And I'll beat you again and again and again So they're talking mad nonsense to each other, right? Mad nonsense to each other. I had to get into my New York. Shout out to the Knicks. Until he tells Will Ospreay that he got a fragile neck, and then Will Ospreay sprang on him, basically, punch him in the mouth, bam, knocks him back. Swerve's like, oh, that's what we doing. Say less. Here come Nana with the chain. Gives him the chain. So now he's advancing on Will. He's getting a little tense. Out come the Death Riders. Death Riders come out, surround the ring. Swerve just grabs the mic, like, yo, nah, you changed, bro. You changed. Good stuff from Swerve and Will Ospreay. Really looking forward to that match coming at Forbidden Door. That's actually probably, of all the matches on the card, that is definitely the one that I'm looking forward to the most. Steel cage match is going to be cool because if you know me, you know what I love about AEW. I love me a good clusterfuck, and that is absolutely going to be a clusterfuck. 6 men in a cage. Darby, who will do anything. Kyle Fletcher, who kills it every time in any kind of setting. Mark Briscoe is wild. Like the pieces are going to be great, so it won't have the emotional stakes and some of the stuff that the one last year I think had, but it does have stakes because the winner of that match, they're fighting basically for Mark Briscoe to get a title shot. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic in and of itself. So, but yeah, Will Ospreay Swerve, that is the match that I'm looking forward to. Still hanging with Will Ospreay winning and going to All In. The story is just there for him, and it's in London, and he'll probably, I imagine, will be winning the title at that show. Now, let's talk the women's tournament because this has been a little strange, right? This one's been a little strange. So the initial bracket, you had Persephone and Hazuki on the one side, but Persephone Hazuki, Willow Nightingale, and Alex Windsor on one side. On the other side, you had Mina Shirakawa and Athena, and you had Sky Blue and Sarii from Stardom. Is she from Stardom? Yeah, from Stardom. Before the tournament even starts, we get Willow Nightingale announcing that she is injured and she will not be able to participate in the Owen, and that she will be relinquishing the TBS championship. So, immediate gap, they're playing that up. There's going to be a wild card. Rumors are running rampant. Who's going to be the wild card? There are a couple of names being thrown around, but most people were kind of on the fence, or on the side of it's going to be Mercedes Moné. Persephone beats Hazuki. No. Actually, that's not even what happened. What was the first match? Athena and Mina was the first match. Athena was the first person to move on to the semifinal round. Next up, Alex Windsor and the wild card, who indeed turned out to be Mercedes Moné. Now, they are slow walking the women's side of the tournament much more than they were the men's. They could have had both done in kind of the same amount of time. This plays probably more into what people say about women's matches on Dynamite, and not so much Collision, but definitely on Dynamite, that the women don't get but like one match in a segment most of the time. Still, it's still a problem. So it's been spread out over like one match over these shows. They've kind of sped it up now as we're getting closer to it, but they kind of slow walked this one a lot. The men's tournament was almost over by the time we were like 2 or 3 matches in to the semifinals here. For context, we had the final last week on Dynamite for the men's. where we didn't get our first semifinal match till this week on Dynamite, and tonight on Collision we get the other one. So where we had a segment where it was done and there was a segment last week or this past week for the men's, we're still trying to figure out who's going to be in the finals for the women's. So they slow walk the women's, and I think they kind of do that every year. It feels like I could be wrong, but this one feels a little slow walked. So Mercedes, of course, is the wild card. She takes on Alex Windsor. She wins. Next, we have Persephone taking on Hazuki. I think I gave that one to Persephone. And I guess it makes sense to have had somebody kind of in stardom who would go forward. So that kind of makes sense. Hazuki gets the win over Persephone, moves forward. Now, that's one of those situations where you like have somebody moving on who nobody really knows. So they had to kind of do some work to get Hazuki kind of not even really familiar, but at least do some introduction. And video packages go a long way. And they did that. That's always been a thing that people who want to criticize AEW, that's one of those things that they have always kind of done, really, but was important to do here. Mercedes Moné, and then in the final, sorry, before I move to the next round, in the final match in the quarterfinals, you had Sky Blue, and then we learned that Sari was injured and would not be able to take her place in the Owen. She was replaced by Maya World. Now, this feels, I won't say it feels random because there are other women that could have been in that spot. Go figure. Maya, um, prior to this match, we had Renee Paquette, who, of course, gives her kind of sideline report, revealed how Maya's older brother had tragically passed away prior to this, and he was the one that kind of got her into wrestling in the first place, giving her the emotional um, weight of the story. You should have known from that, because in doing so, Maya World pulls out the upset victory over Sky Blue. I mean, yeah. Okay, that's random. Sorry, I'm looking at some bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Um. So wait. 1 second. Yeah. So Maya World gets the upset victory over Sky Blue, moves on to the semifinals. All right. Now, this is where we are now. So this past week, this on Dynamite, you had Mercedes Moné taking on Hazuki. Really great match. They went 22 and a half minutes. That's a very long Dynamite match. Um, so there's that. Uh, Mercedes Moné, of course, gets away with the win. She's going to the finals, which I don't think was much of um, wasn't really much of a hard thing to guess once you saw that she was involved. Truth be told, even when Willow was in that spot, I thought Willow was going to be the one to go to the finals. So makes perfectly good sense that Mercedes would. And also, as I've said, there's no one else really in this tournament who I could see going to Forbidden Door. Going to All In to face like Tekla. Um, in either iteration of it, right? Now, could you maybe have done somebody else from Stardom going all the way? You could have, but then it would have been. Uh, because then you get the forbidden door of it, right? And then kind of keeping with Tekla's stardom, screw stardom thing. You definitely could have kept that going. But I don't think they would have. It'd been strange. And then you had a lot of people complaining about that because, go figure. Um, Tonight on Collision, the final semifinal match, who will determine who is going to the finals for Forbidden Door. You have Athena, Maya World. That is going to be an interesting match as well because um, there's the relationship there that I think Athena trained Maya World uh, on Collision and on, I want to say, Dynamite. Definitely on Collision. Did a good job of kind of building that up, that relationship. I think there was also a relationship between Mercedes and Hazuki. I think they had a match before as well. So they had some. So in the same way that the men's kind of led to semifinal matches that had some stakes there, some story behind it, there's also the case there with the semifinals. In the women's, it's just not as known and recent. Because I think anything with the thing in my world, like that they have to. That's one of those things they have to tell you on commentary. Same thing with like Mercedes and Hazuki, where they do have a history elsewhere, but you don't know that. So commentary has to tell you. With the men's, like with Will Ospreay and Mark Davis, that just happened recently, so it's not that hard to, really see. Like, oh, okay, that just I see the story there. Same thing with Swerve and Brody, that just happened fairly recently, so it makes sense. The Athena Maya World match was already recorded. So there are spoilers out there. If you want the spoilers, you can go find them. I'm not going to tell you. But looking at this, even from the beginning, again, it always made sense to either be. I thought Willow. It made sense that it could be Mercedes from the jump. There weren't a lot of people in this tournament that I thought had a shot. Kind of the same thing with the men's. Like there are people in the men's that could have gone all the way and would have made perfectly good sense. Will Ospreay was always the favorite, but you could have done Swerve. You could do Swerve and make it make sense. You could do Brody and make it make sense. If we're gonna be honest, like he's already beaten Brody. MJF has already beaten Brody. He's already beaten Bandito. Mark Davis and Jack Perry weren't going to be there. Claudio wasn't going to be there. A case could have been made for Joe, maybe, even though they've already kind of done that. But Will Ospreay was always the favorite. But there were some. It was always favorite, and it was very easy path to track. But there were other people. Like even right now, if Swerve beats Will Ospreay, I'm not mad at an MJF Swerve match at All In. It's not the biggest thing you can do at All In, especially with Will Ospreay being right there. But I wouldn't be mad at it. So there's that. With the women though, it's a little different because again, it's some risk you have to take. Persephone, who's very new to all of it, and she's really mostly been on ROH. She's shown up on AEW a few times here and there. She may have some really good showings. That's how she ended up getting the contract. But the majority of the time, she's been on like ROH, so she's not as integrated with the crowd as some of the other people who could have been. Hazuki as well. I think she's had a couple of matches in AEW, but not that many. So she's not a name, Now, could you kind of make a name out of her by going to the finals? Sure. Absolutely. Mercedes, well, let's say Willow at first. Again, I would say at the time was the biggest name, the biggest and most ahead of the pack name in the tournament, and definitely was a favorite to go to the finals. The fact that she was out and Mercedes took her place, that spot still occupied by Mercedes. The only way this would have had the same kind of effect as the men's is if Mercedes and Willow were in it from the jump, and then they ran through like that. Alex Windsor already had her beef with Tekla. Didn't make sense that she would go through. Now, there was something that could have been said to Alex Windsor going, and um, again, being in that match at Wembley in front of her home country, absolutely something that could have been said there. And there's a story there for Alex Windsor and Will Ospreay to win, kind of mirroring the Adam Cole Britt Baker of it all from the first Owen tournament. So there's something there, but highly doubt they would have did that. Mina wasn't. There's nothing there for Mina. Athena was one that I said, now she could be a dark horse, as they say. I could see her winning and going to going to All In. And then you kind of get this, the story of her finally winning the Owen, because she mentioned to Maya World how, she's never gotten past the semifinal round, which is why winning this match against Maya would mean so much. So her winning and going to All In, finally achieving winning that, and then finally getting another AEW shot at Wembley. I think if you did that, you would have to have her win. And I kind of think she has like the Mercedes thing where like her winning the AEW Women's Championship wouldn't happen until she's no longer the ROH champion. And right now she's in the midst of a very historic record-setting run. Don't know if you want to like sully that any kind of way by having her the AEW champion as well. So there's something to think about. She, for all intents and purposes, is still active. Athena Mercedes in the final would talk about dream match would be crazy. They had a match before, and then that would lead us to Athena getting the win over Mercedes. And going there. So Athena's a dark horse there. That I don't know if I would have seen if Willow. Well, you know what? If Willow was there, I still probably would have went that same way. I think I'm not sure. There, Sky Blue. I didn't think Sky Blue was going anywhere, even when it was Sari. I figured Sari probably would have won. Maya World getting introduced there. I think then I may have gave it to Sky Blue. But once I kind of knowing how sometimes these things play out, when they have that kind of substitution, they typically let them win at least one round. So it would make sense for Athena to beat Maya World and go on to the finals. That would make sense. Unless you want to go with like the Cinderella story of it all. That definitely will be a Cinderella story. So, but then I don't know how did the Cinderella story end? Because sometimes it's a matter of getting to the finals, and other times it's a matter of winning the whole thing. So Maya World would be the Cinderella story of the tournament if she were to go forward, and definitely if she was to win. Have to tune in to Collision tonight to find out how that played out. And that's all I'll say about that. So those are the men's and women's Owen Hart Cup tournaments. Notice how they just started with 8 and just went down, and they didn't do these weird fatal 4-way things that they did, but whatever. I'm not comparing the two. I mean, I kind of am, but whatever. It is what it is, right? It's what it is. Excuse me. So those two matches, if I'm gonna be honest, if it's Mercedes and Athena, definitely that will be added to the matches that I'm looking forward to for Forbidden Door. If it's Mercedes and Maya, I'll still be looking forward to it, but for a different reason. Again, the Cinderella story of it all. Mercedes could be the first person to go back to back in the Owen. I could see Mercedes versus Tekla being very interesting for All In, and you need a big match for All In, and that makes a lot of sense. Athena could be a big match, but again, I don't know. I think Tekla would just win then. If it's Mercedes, I would give the win to Mercedes, but who knows? Maya World is in there as well, and that is a very interesting prospect because you could do something very interesting with her that you haven't really done by having somebody who um she's not necessarily virtually unknown, but she doesn't have a huge track record in terms of what she's doing or what she's done in singles or really in general in AEW. For the most part, she's done a lot of tag team matches. Of course, remember they came in, they kind of stepped in that space where Tegan Knox, which I know that's not her name on the Indies, and I don't even feel like going to find what her name and her partner's name because I'm drawing a blank on that too. But remember, there was that situation where Tegan Knox and her partner refused to, or there was a whole thing about them not getting enough time and kind of walking out of Collision and Maya World and the other girl whose name I cannot remember. I'm drawing a blank on all these names. But where they stepped in and they've kind of been featured a lot ever since. Haven't picked up a lot of wins, but they have kind of taken that and created a bit of a feature spot for themselves uh, since that has happened. And now, Maya World, as a result, you know, moving through the Owen. And really, one match away from the finals of the Owen and 2 matches away from potentially getting a world title shot at the biggest show of the year. So that could have been Tegan Knox. That's all I'm gonna say. But whatever. Um, So interested to see how that plays out. I'm pretty sure I'll be watching Collision tonight, so we'll see how that goes as well. As for the rest of Forbidden Door, like I said, I ran down the card. The Team Briscoe thing, so I didn't get a chance, I think, to even cover this at all. Mark Briscoe called out MJF a couple of weeks ago. Last time we talked, he cut this really impassioned promo. After that, basically the next week, called out MJF again, but this time to tell him, hey, you see him backstage talking to Tony Khan, and he says, hey, we came up with a really good solution as to how to handle this. Where we start with? Okay, yeah. We got a really good way to handle this. Talk to Tony Khan. Tony Khan says, hey, here's the deal. He has decided to make it a 6-on-6 match. And if my team wins, I get a title shot. And it's steel cage match. So that's how we got to 6-man steel cage. I bring my friends, you bring your friends, we do the thing. It's very almost similar in ways to how I don't want to say similar, but it's kind of like it's kind of like its own thing to how we got to Stadium Stampede last month at Double or Nothing. That like there's no real issue with groups to get us there. We're just gonna kind of make one. This isn't like, oh, these group of people and they have a problem with the Don Callis family, and so now they're in a match. It's kind of like, no, they're just MJF's kind of guns for hire because MJF doesn't have any friends of his own. So go figure. Excuse me again. So we're there. And that's cool. And like I said, we had a match between Orange Cassidy and Andrade El Idolo. So all these things are kind of coming into play. Of course, we had Sky Blue, Maya World. Like I mentioned, Maya got the win there. Swerve, of course, beat Brody King. Great match there as well. There's this thing kind of going on, kind of a little mini feud they had where Jon Moxley and the Death Riders and Shane Taylor and STP, Shane Taylor Promotions. We had Jon Moxley versus Shane Taylor, which Jon Moxley won via submission. And then we had STP laying out the Death Riders. And let me tell you, there was something satisfying, and I know it probably shouldn't have been. There was something satisfying about seeing STP on Dynamite standing tall over the Death Riders of all people. And listen, we know what STP is made up of, okay? We know what it is. I talked last night about all the black excellence that's currently permeating the wrestling landscape. Okay, so we know what STP consists of. and it's just good to see. You know, that's not something you see that often. I kind of hate. I mean, well, it had to be a heel thing, but for the Death Riders who have run roughshod, like at no point, like they're definitely baby faces now. They're absolutely baby faces now, in a very weird way, but they're absolutely baby faces now. They're coming to the rescue of Will Ospreay. You know, John Moxley is still just John Moxley. He's so over that it doesn't even really matter what you think he is. That's just what he is. Um, like I said, they're super over, and even the ones who are kind of heelish still kind of babyface as well. Even Marina, you know. Um, so they had that match. That kind of led us to a street fight between STP and Mox. Oh, STP and the Death Riders on Collision, which I did watch a little later, but not in the moment because I had some stuff. I actually was watching the Knicks game, so I didn't watch Dynamite. Oh, Collision that weekend. Um, so they had the Cincinnati Street Fight, of course. Death Riders win. Crazy match there as well. A lot of stuff happening there. And then that was kind of it. That stemmed from, I think there was another 6-man match or a tag team match the weekend before on Collision that led us to the Shane Taylor, John Moxley of it all. So, nice little mini feud that they threw in there. Uh, and then also what's happening in the AEW world is we got this Tommaso Ciampa, Chris Jericho thing that's happening. Again, I always say, like, a lot of people are anti-Jericho for a lot of different reasons. He's not offensive to me necessarily. I think he tends to, he definitely like is out to put himself over a lot of times, even when it didn't. Sometimes sometimes it seems like he is, even when he's not, right? To get himself over. The mocking and belittling and making things that are kind of serious not so serious is always kind of like a tricky thing to navigate. But I do understand. Again, I understand the Jericho of it all, I guess is what I'll say there. So I won't make a big to do about that, if you will. Like even in this promo that they had on Dynamite a couple of weeks ago, with Jericho basically calling him Tommy and getting the crowd to chant Tommy, Tommaso Ciampa. And Tommaso Ciampa, I think, is kind of in on it as well, because then he goes, "Oh, my mother doesn't even call me Tommy," and that prompts Jericho to Tommy Mommy, which causes the Tommy's Mommy chant. But that's the the gist of things, and it's basically saying that Ciampa, you know, basically is saying that, you know, him just saying like, "Yo, I don't like this." That actually might have come later, but the gist of this feud is basically Tommaso Ciampa saying like, "Hey, I used to respect you, but the version of you that's been around for a while, I don't like that, and I want to kick your ass." Um, so a lot of verbal sparring back and forth. They kind of had a pull apart Rob, a pab. Shout out to Elite Wrestling. Um, and that's pretty much the most of that Dynamite. So in that next Collision, of course, we got some things as well. Where we get that Collisions are so loaded. That 2 hours that they do for Dynamite and the 2 hours that they do for Collision, two different types of 2 hours, because Collisions are loaded. I don't know if because the matches I'll say the matches are shorter. They're kind of squashy sometimes, except for like the marquee stuff. They do throw a couple more squashes in there. There's not even any like talking segments. But man, Collisions are loaded all the time. There's so much stuff on this one. From this one from like last weekend. That's a lot of stuff. I'm just gonna run through them real quick. So you had Kenny Omega defeating Bad Dude Tito, cutting a promo. No. That was this Monday. That was this Wednesday that promo had. Well, he did cut a promo afterwards about accepting Zack Sabre Jr.'s challenge. There was a segment with Kyle Fletcher talking about Takeshita and Okada and Kyle Fletcher saying they're gonna bring the international title back to the Don Callis family. Anthony Bowens cuts a promo backstage about the ops. Hook kind of puts him in check, telling him to stop acting like the leader. We get the Rascals taking on a couple of jobbers who they beat. Then they call out. So they got that weird because Omega did that after the Tito match, but okay. They call out Myron Reed. We get Kevin Knight versus Myron Reed, which I knew was going to be crazy, and it was crazy. Like, that's a match that you know you're going to see some years down the line. Kevin Knight is a heel. You know how they say, like, this person's been a revelation? Kevin Knight as a heel has been a revelation. I'm so glad because it feels like he's found the thing. What he was doing as a babyface didn't feel like it worked. The persona, and it's not just that he was leaning into heelness before, it's that now he feels a different level of confidence. And that works wonders. So definitely very happy to see that in Kevin Knight. Myron Reed, I'm sure they're going to get to doing something with the Rascals. I think what happens a lot of time in AEW, sometimes people will kind of just be on TV. It's a weird thing. Like, if you're on TV a lot, sometimes it's a good thing to keep you on TV because there are layers on AEW. Because, like, you could be at the top, you can be kind of at the mid, you can be low card, you can be winning, you can be. But if you're just on TV, typically you're still good. If you get to a place where you're not on TV that much and you're not even on ROH, because that'll happen. There are a lot of people who sign who just won't be on TV. So I think the thing with the Rascals is to keep them on TV, to keep showcasing them, and eventually they will do something with them. More than likely, I can imagine them being in the trios and winning the trios championship because they haven't had the opportunity to do that as a group, I don't think. So looking forward to seeing that, and I can see them doing some single stuff really with all three of them. I mean, they've really, but that's a huge signing for them, and there's so many things that you can do. You can have them in solo situations, tag team situations, trio situations. The Rascals is a very big sign for them, and I think that they do have a plan eventually. It's just like right now there's stuff there that you can't really squeeze them into, and I think that's okay. I think that's all right. I think there's some other names that are really about to come in. This exodus from WWE that's been happening lately, and I guess this exodus from TNA. There's going to be a lot of names. I don't think Tony's going to go too crazy on the name signing. I ain't gonna say I know for a fact. The most prominent name that everybody thinks is going to AEW is the New Day. It's written in the stars that they're going to the AEW, and that's going to be wild. Wrestling World going to be on fire when they do that. And AEW needs to book them. Tony needs to book them correctly. I don't know what correctly looks like. That's a boost to your tag team division. That's a boost to your singles division. So do with that what you will. Give me Xavier Woods and Kenny Omega ASAP. Run it. Give me both of them. Give me New Day, but whatever. We talked about that before. Moving on. So of course Kevin Knight defeated Myron Reed. That was a hell of a match. Divine Dominion, of course, just cut a promo. Divine Dominion probably will have some a pre-show match, which is what they typically have at these shows here lately, because they don't have, for them to have a tag division, they don't have anybody that they're building up to actually take on Megan Bayne and Elena Cross, and especially not beat them. So there's that. I talked about the Athena promo on My World. Athena had a match, a little squash match. She beat Tiara James. That's when the whole thing came out. Athena continues to attack Tiara. Maya World comes out to make save. She runs off. Then Athena is back in the ring, attacks Maya. So like I said, we're getting to the personal. We're building. We're giving some meat to the match they're going to have tonight. Um, get a Ricochet promo where he says he's coming after the international title with Takeshita. The Dogs defeated the Young Bucks in a match that pretty much determines them as the number one contenders to the tag team titles. We get Tekla cutting the promo basically about Stardom again, basically saying send your best. We get a Bang Bang Gang promo against the Dogs. Now, survival of the fittest qualifying matches. These are the matches that are going to determine who's going to be in the survival of the fittest match for the vacant TBS championship. We had Persephone defeating Julia Hart. So even though she lost in the Owen, she is now qualified for the TBS championship survival of the fittest match. We also had a survival of the fittest match with Hikaru Shida defeating Zeta Steel of Skyflight. So now she's going as well. So far we have Persephone and Hikaru Shida who have qualified for the survival of the fittest match. We had Jake Doyle from the Don Callis family beating Speedball Mike Bailey. And of course, as I previously mentioned, the Cincinnati Street Fight with the Death Rogers and Shane Taylor Promotions. That is a loaded show. The show was only 2 hours. And it's not like 2 hours with an overrun like Dynamite typically is. It was like a solid 2 hour show. Now the Dynamite was the Summer Blockbuster. I think that was like 2.5 hours. And it still doesn't seem as packed as this does. There's a lot in those collision shows. So go figure. And then this past week on Dynamite, the saga continues. So the Don Callis family announces the team. And of course, like I said, it's Kevin Knight, Kyle Fletcher, Kazuchika Okada, and Andrade Alidolo. Andrade is like, yo, I ain't here for none of this MJF business because I'm trying to be the champion myself. You hear me? Kevin Knight is like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm the man on the team. Now that I'm here, you know, we big business. You feel me? Kyle Fletcher don't like that because he got his TNT championship. Him and Okada, though, are also like, well, we want the international championship. Like, there are things in this team that are like, you know, a little spicy. Open up the show, we get Kenny Omega taking on Tony Nese. Quick little squash match, of course. TMDK, the Mighty Don't Kneel, show up to confront Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega got jabs for Zack Sabre Jr. Very petty. Very petty. So nothing really happens. The Bucks come out to back up Kenny Omega. The Bucks and Jack Perry actually come out to back up Kenny Omega. Nothing really happens. Everybody goes on about their separate ways. So that's it. We had a tag team match. Jon Moxley, Danny Garcia taking on Brodito. Brodito gets the win. And that leads to Bandito challenging Jon Moxley for the Continental Championship at Forbidden Door. And of course, that match has been made official. Another win for Moxley. Next, the Dogs coming out. We have Cope and Cage returning. They attack the Dogs. They cut a promo afterwards, basically saying we're gonna see your Forbidden Door, you know, and we're gonna beat y'all ass, basically. Again, we get the Mercedes Moné Hazuki match. Mercedes wins after a very good match. I remember this crowd being kind of quiet. And I feel like it's been like that a couple of weeks. And I don't think it's the show. I've seen people say, like, well, people don't, you know, people said the show's ice cold or these different things. I don't know if that's the case because again, sometimes it really does just matter on the crowd. Some crowds are just more lively than others, and sometimes there's always like this kind of equation of what are you putting in front of what crowd that determines what they'll react to. You get you a really hot crowd that's damn near gonna react to anything, then the show seems a lot hotter. You got a cold crowd, like a segment there. The crowd can determine what a segment does and how you perceive the entire show. So I think there's something funny to say like AEW presented a cold show and that's why the crowd was cold. Sometimes that's the case. I'm not saying that it's never the case. Sometimes that's the case. I don't know if I thought this show was cold, but I think the crowd not being hot made the show feel cold from a viewing perspective. Because if the crowd was hot for all the stuff they were given, you don't see those segments necessarily as, depending on how bad it is, you don't always see those segments as, oh, you know, this was a bad segment or whatever. You kind of look at it like, oh, okay, the crowd was hot. You're just looking at the crowd was hot for it. That's kind of it. Um, so next up we have the Will Ospreay swerve back face to face. Of course, I mentioned that. And in the main event, we had basically a preview of the cage match, which I think is a little strange because I think they can change these. I don't know. I feel like they can do something here, but this is what they chose to do, I guess. Basically, the match that we're going to get at Forbidden Door, we got it without the cage aspect. They named their teams and then they had a 12-man tag. That are the same people that were going to be in the 12-man tag at Forbidden Door. And the caveat here, I guess, was if anybody got DQ'd, that team would lose like a man advantage or whatever. Nobody got disqualified, so that kind of never came up, I guess. But in that, we had, again, it was wild. It was all over the place. It was crazy, but it was mostly in ring stuff. I'm sure there was some outside the ring stuff as well. But I guess you say it was a preview to what we're going to get at Forbidden Door. MJF gets the win by making Roddy tap out. I think a lot of the stuff we're doing, because MJF is actually somewhat injured, he's still able to compete because he was in this match and his leg was taped up, but still was performing pretty fine. But I think these matches are to kind of keep him active because he is still able to be active without having the full brunt of a one-on-one match all on his shoulder, basically. These kind of give him an opportunity to kind of hide and not have to do an entire match. So I understand that. Give him time to kind of heal up in leading up to Forbidden Door. I mean, not Forbidden Door, I keep saying that. And All In. Pretty sure he's going to have maybe he'll have a match at Redemption. I'm not sure there. There's the case could be made for like Kenny Omega, and maybe that leads somehow to how we get to maybe a triple threat between MJF, Kenny, and Will Ospreay at All In, or just straight up Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay at All In. I'm not sure. So, MJF has kind of been carrying this company as champ for the most part. Darby had a really good run as champion, but MJF has been a very dominant and a very good champion the majority of this year. I do feel like he should get the main event at All In, but I also think the biggest thing that you could do would probably be Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. I think if you had all three in there, that could be equally as huge for all three. So, not sure there. And that's the current state of AEW. Like I said, the Collision spoilers are out there. I have not seen the entire spoilers, even though there are a couple of things that I have had spoiled for me, but that's okay. So, and I have ran this one a little long. I ran about at the same time I ran yesterday, so it's okay. So that's what's going on in AEW right now. Really interested in the product. Like I said, Forbidden Door is one of those things. The card doesn't look that great, but there are at least one or two things that I'm kind of looking forward to. Like I said, I love me a good clusterfuck, and that steel cage match is absolutely going to be that. Swerve and Will Ospreay, I think, is going to be insane. Probably another match of the year candidate. I can pretty much almost call it off the top of my head. The women's final should be very interesting as well, depending on which way they decide to go, even though I know. But for the sake of purposes of this conversation, whichever way they decide to go, I think it should be very interesting. And overall, AEW does not miss on pay-per-view. So even if the door isn't that forbidden, okay, even if the card isn't looking like some of the more fascinating Forbidden Door cards. Because I think a lot of part of that too is like there's nobody to really have certain Forbidden Door stuff with in the same way. There is, but there isn't. Not in the way that it used to be, right? When you had Bryan Danielson, plenty of people in New Japan that you wanted to see him go against. You wanted to see him against Zack Sabre. You wanted to see him against Okada. You wanted to see him against like Will Ospreay or whoever. So like Bryan Danielson was a dream match machine, right? Will Ospreay kind of is, but he's done a lot in New Japan, so there's not a lot of dream match stuff there for him. Swerve maybe there could be, but not in the same natural sense as there was like with a Bryan Danielson. Kenny Omega, believe it or not, still has some people that he hadn't faced from New Japan, and there's some stuff there too as well. There's some Copen Cage stuff that you can kind of do if you really wanted to. So I mean, there's stuff there, and then opening up, especially if you're opening up CMLL, there's a ton that you can do. The people in CMLL are probably not as known to the wrestling public as like some of the New Japan stars, but they do have some. You know, give me a Kenny Omega Mystico maybe, or you know, I mean, who knows? There's so much you can do there. So, it may not be as forbidden as other Forbidden Doors, but AEW, nobody does AEW like pay-per-view. Nobody does pay-per-view like AEW. Said that wrong. So I will be tuned in as I always am. When is Redemption? Because I need to timeline something a little bit. So next up, like I said, it is the Redemption show, which is going to be in British Columbia. No, Quebec. So it's straight up in Canada. Okay. Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It makes a lot of sense for Kenny Omega to challenge MJF probably in Redemption and either win the title or something that maybe leads him towards London with Kenny Omega, with Ospreay. Because they've kind of teased that a couple of times. So it does seem like that may be where we're heading there. That is July 26th. I think, yeah, Nashville has the go home show to Redemption. The go home Dynamite and the go home Collision to Redemption. Nashville has it. And I intend to be there. That makes me very happy. Go home show to Redemption. Very interesting. Not sure what that show is going to be or what that show is going to look like. Doesn't really matter. Go home shows to pay per view are always fun. And Nashville had the show after Full Gear last year, which was the first night of which was the first night of the C2. So again, Nashville getting the good stuff, man. They're not coming to Memphis this year. I can tell you that. I highly doubt they'll be in Memphis this year. And if they do, it'll be a Collision. They're probably not coming for a Dynamite. Nashville's probably going to be as good as it gets. I think that was, because I'm pretty sure it was as good as it got last year. And they're probably not coming to Memphis, period. They're probably going to go to Landers in South Haven. Whatever, I'm processing. Verbal processing. Sorry. Anywho, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talmbout Rasslin. I'm your host, the Untouchable J.R. Atkins. Enjoy your Saturday. If you're new here, again, I'll say it one more time for anybody. Like, share, subscribe, leave a rating, review. Do all the things. Follow here on Substack. Follow on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify. Talmbout Rasslin. You see how it's spelled. We're on the road to 50. Make sure you tell somebody. If you're new here, make sure that you subscribe. We're trying to get those numbers up. We're trying to hit 50 by the end of the year. Make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe as well so that you're up to date on whenever I drop a new episode. Again, we're on the road to 50. That 50th episode, I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but it's going to be a very serious situation. And I'm very excited and very much looking forward to it because I couldn't be here without you. Because otherwise, I'm just talking out into the void. So whoever it is that's listening to my voice, thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you hit me up if you're interested in those t-shirts, the Talmbout Rasslin t-shirts. Those are available. And if you see me out and about, man, just give your boy a holler, say what's up, say you want to talk about wrestling. and we can talk about wrestling. Because I love wrestling fans. I love wrestling. I love talking to wrestling fans, even if we don't agree all the time. So, all that being said, it's another Saturday. It's another one in the books. So until next time, we are out.